Kia ora koutou. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shai. I'm the Deputy Leader of TOP. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I am very excited to be joined by our candidates for Tauranga and the Bay of Plenty. I have Andrew Caie here, who is our candidate in Tauranga. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Shai, how you doing?
Good, thank you. And Chris Jenkins in the Bay of Plenty. Hey, Chris.
Kia ora.
Welcome to both of you. And this is the first time I have interviewed these gentlemen, but I was lucky enough to speak with them at some events a few months ago before we went through our second COVID turmoil, back when we could be out freely with the public. I will sort out my beeping notifications in just a moment. I'm sorry, folks. Bear with me. So thank you very much for being here. What I would love to do is just to throw this to each of you guys to introduce yourselves and tell everyone a little bit about your background. So Andrew, I would love to start with you, just a bit about your background and what brought you to TOP.
Well, my background is in physiotherapy. I got into physiotherapy because I like to help people. I've done stints in private practice, public health, and rest homes. And by far the most enjoyable was rest homes. Forming relationships with the clients was absolutely amazing. What brought me to TOP was evidence-based policy. As lame as that might sound. As a physiotherapist, we're expected to stay up to date with the latest knowledge so that we can adapt our treatments and provide the best outcomes for our patients. And evidence is really important to my professional life, and making sure that I stay on top of it. And with TOP, there was a political party that presented the evidence behind their decision making and behind their policy, and that was just something that I could really get on board with. Tired of the same old politics, the same old ineffective decisions, and people making decisions based on ideology when you can literally present the evidence and be like, this is not going to do what you think it will, and they don't bother to change it all.
Let's not start off too depressing, but you're right. Well, it's great to have you in the team, Andrew. I'm so glad you have joined us.
Thank you.
So Chris, let's hear about your background and why you stepped into the TOP team.
Yeah, thanks, Shai. So I'm Chris. I was drawn to TOP about 3 years ago. Before that, I'm a dad to 3 daughters. They're quite cool, quite like them. And I was lucky enough to buy my first home about 6 years ago now. And I've had a pretty decent career so far. I work as a data manager for a utility company. But through hard work and some help from family, I was able to buy my first home. And I made more just by being a homeowner in that first year than I did by working at a well-paying job. And I thought about that quite a bit for a while. And then at the TOP roadshow, it really clicked as to what was actually going on with that, where we've got this housing market that's just building and building and building and building, and people selling backwards and forwards to each other. Everyone that sells is buying into the same market. So most people aren't even making any money out of this thing. But every dollar that my house went up, even though I didn't get to go and spend that, every dollar my house went up was coming out of the pockets of my kids. And I kind of realized that there's something a bit wrong in our system here, where we're just buying and selling things to each other. We're not investing in productivity. We're not investing in growing our country. We're just buying and selling things to each other. And there's a very small group of people that are making a lot of money there. The ones that have multiple homes are the ones that are actually able to get anything out of it. But we're all part of this cycle. We all think it's making us rich, but the only thing it's doing is it's destroying our kids' shop. So for me, that was the reason that brought me to TOP. There's a whole lot of other things in there that I started to become familiar with in 2017 through the election, and have obviously grown a lot deeper more recently as it's become a whole second job on top of the job that I already had and was keeping me very busy. But to have evidence-based policy, to look at the world from a lens of we want all New Zealanders to have the opportunity to thrive. We look at the world through that lens and go out in search of what's the best way to achieve that in this particular area, whether it's housing, whether it's the benefit system, the tax system, whether it's healthcare, all of these things. We've got a team that go out, do the research, listen to the experts, and put together a policy that will actually make a difference. For me, that's really the drive. That's what drew me to TOP and why I'm fighting to make this thing a thing.
And I think that's what I love so much about our team, is that we're all actually here because we're all sick and tired of the same old. And we know fundamentally that things have to change, and we're just not getting it right from these same old parties. So I'd love to hear, I know you guys are sometimes campaigning together and your electorates are right next to each other. So Andrew, I know I've seen you, seen photos of you, I haven't been there obviously, but of you out in the markets, and I know you spend a lot of time speaking with people in your area. What is sort of one of the most common reactions that you get to people, from people when you start talking to them about TOP?
People are really positive. People like the evidence-based ideas, and one of the biggest issues in Tauranga is housing affordability. So to be a party with a real plan to tackle that resonates really well with our people. And also on the other side in Tauranga, we've got a lot of poverty and a lot of people that suffer from the benefit trap, the welfare trap. So a universal basic income as a foundation for our people to build themselves from really resonates well. Those would probably be the two main things. But overall, yeah, really positive.
That's so good to hear. So have you had, I'll ask you in a second, Chris, but I really want to know, Andrew, have you had any Meet the Candidate evenings as yet?
Yeah, we have had 2 locally, and then there were 2 which we were unfortunately excluded from, which is, always a bother. And so it's nice to hear the other candidates. I got a pretty solid endorsement from both the Labour candidate and the Green candidate, which was quite cool. Clashed with Simon Bridges a few times, but you can't win everyone over. But yeah, so far they've gone really well.
That is so positive to hear. What was the endorsement from Greens and Labour? I'd love to hear that.
The Greens candidate said that I would make the ideal Greens candidate. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. And the Labour candidate said that she really liked our ideas and thought that Labour could steal some of them. And I said, go for it. It's all about getting the ideas through, not necessarily about chasing the ego, which is, again, something that I really love about our party. We're really about, improving the well-being of our people.
Yeah, I totally agree. Wouldn't it be lovely if they had the courage to steal our policies?
Yes.
That will actually fix the housing crisis. No, you cannot build your way out of it. And no, the answer is not just more social houses.
But reforming the RMA.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, that's the only problem, of course. Chris, how have you been going out in your community in the Bay of Plenty?
I've actually been loving the last few days. I've had the chance to take some time off work to be full-time campaigning. And I've been visiting the small businesses throughout the Bay of Plenty electorate. Heaps of dairies, heaps of liquor stores, heaps of bakeries and cafes, and just going into where people are. The liquor stores love to talk, by the way. Go into a liquor store in the morning and...
They have no customers and they're getting bored, or?
The customers they have in the morning are a little different to their customers in the afternoon and evening. So when I walk in for a conversation, they seem to really, really love it. So just been really enjoying those conversations, focusing on, hey guys, we're actually sticking up for you. Small business has a voice now, and we'll leave you better off, we'll leave your customers better off. And genuinely, that is what they've been waiting to hear for a long time. I had someone greet me today as I walked in. Oh, we've got a politician here. We better get ready for this. They saw me coming up in my top shirt and suit jacket like they wouldn't normally expect a customer. This was in a building company, actually. And I had a really good chat. The owner was just on his way out the door, but he asked the office, the person behind the desk, he asked her to talk with me for 5 minutes and report back to him what our policy was. And this poor young girl she's been told she has to listen to a policy pitch. And
2 votes for the price of one there, Chris.
But he was really wanting to hear what we had to say, because housing is struggling, because the price of land is going up so high that it's hard for them to get places to build on. So as an industry, they're suffering from the success of the housing market. It's gone up too high, and now we've actually got, you can't build the way out of it because you can't afford to. It's just not a thing. So some of those conversations have just been really amazing, especially people attached to the housing industry that are 100% on board with the reform that we're proposing in the area. They know it's going to take big change to actually fix this thing.
And isn't that just so illustrative of how mad the situation is, that the industry that should be benefiting the most from boom is also not actually benefiting so much, because it's just screwing everyone.
Yes.
New Zealand, what are you doing? I think I've spent a lot of time focusing on housing issues today, so maybe we should spend a few moments talking about yourselves a little bit, because I'm hoping that there are some people in the Tauranga and Bay of Plenty electorates who realise that they don't just have to vote for the same old parties because that's what they've always done, and that maybe they're watching because they've got an open mind and they want to hear a little bit more about what TOP has to offer. And so we've kind of covered that housing is a really big problem. But Chris, do you want to just kind of explain a little bit about how you normally talk to people in your area about TOP's plan for housing and that kind of reaction that you're getting from them, other than just small business owners?
It doesn't take much introduction, to be honest. People know that it's bad here. Tauranga specifically has the 5th most unaffordable housing in the world, just ahead of Los Angeles when you compare the median wage to the median price of housing. 5th in the world, people get that. People know that we've got a major problem here. So when I say that we're taking on unaffordable housing, they're ready to listen. People want to hear an answer to this. And they've heard it at the debates, they've heard it from the other parties, they've heard what the other offers are, and they want to know, how are you different? Why are you saying this is your one issue? Why is this the thing that you bring up to start a conversation? And just basically talking about this big, it's a money printer under the bed is how I usually describe it. When I bought a house, it came with a free money printer under the bed. And because I own a house, I get to keep that printer running. And as long as that printer runs, then everyone that is not yet on the property ladder is feeding their money into the other end of that machine while I get to reap the benefits. So rent's doubled in the last 15 years. Renters got nothing for that. The price of housing is going up. It's leaving our kids behind. And there is a particular group of society that is benefiting from it. In reality, not very few people are, because we have to buy and sell in the same market. But we're just penalizing our kids. So when I just start to tell this real truth of the story, like this is the real thing that's happening, and they know, everybody knows inside themselves that our kids are the ones that will suffer for this, and we can't keep going forever. So when I start talking about holding the price of housing flat for a generation, they know that has to happen. They know that's our way out. If we don't do that, then we're just going to keep on leaving our people behind. And the benefit is, by incentivizing money out of housing and into actual productive things, that actually makes us all richer. Everyone's had enough basics in economics through high school that they know when you spend money at a bakery, the bakery spends money to pay the staff, it spends money to buy the flour from the farmer down in, I assume, Marlborough. Where do we grow our wheat? Anyway, all of the things that we purchase to make these products that we buy, the dollar's being spent over and over and over again inside New Zealand. But when you buy a house, it stops. And the only way we can possibly ever make money out of the housing market in New Zealand is if we eventually sell it to someone that's out of New Zealand. So, and that's just not on the table. We don't want our housing being bought by overseas investors. We actually want to live in it because we quite like it here. So there is no way out for us. We have to solve this.
Yeah, it's fundamentally getting other people on board with changing our mindset around housing.
Yes.
And it's shelter and not a get rich quick scheme. Okay, so you're on the campaign trail, and it is the first time all three of us have done this, right?
Yes.
It's a pretty crazy, wild ride. I think nobody can prepare you for how grueling and exhausting, emotionally, mentally just draining, because you have to just constantly give all of yourself all of the time. And so it is actually far more of a challenge than I would have ever imagined. But there are some awesome parts about it for sure. Andrew, what would you say is your favorite part about campaigning so far?
Interacting with people. I'm a physio by nature, so having by nature as a job, so having one-on-one interactions with people is kind of something that I thrive on, and I've always been really interested in what makes people tick, what their values are, and what they think of the big issues. So like there's that kind of colloquialism, you know, you don't talk about politics because it's too divisive, and now I have an absolute excuse to just walk up to everyone and kind of find out what's important to them and what really makes them drive. So just getting out and meeting people, and the overall response so far has been great. And I forgot to mention before in the Meet the Candidates, I don't have a vast amount of experience with public speaking on a larger stage. I've done some manual handling training, but that's kind of teaching, which is a lot different than just speaking, when you know exactly what you're going to be covering. So I've had a lot of feedback that that they responded really well to me and my speaking, and a lot of people say, regardless of what happens, I have to keep going for public office. So that's been a real kind of personal boost.
It's really refreshing for people to see someone like you, all of you in my team. To be honest, this is God, why I love our team so much. Is just the genuineness. You know, it's leaving the ego at the door and just doing it for the right reason. And, you know, it sounds so trite, and people watching can just say, Shai's such a cheeseball. But do you know what? When you look around, and people are not stupid, people can tell when you are genuine. And if nothing else, like even people who are like, you know what, I don't actually like your policies, but they will respect you and they respect us. And I'll still get a positive reaction from someone who even might not like the policies that we've got, because they know you're there for the right reason. And it is refreshing. So yeah, call me cheesy, but it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. People are pretty switched on, and I think the way it comes across when you speak from passion and genuine interest.
Yeah.
Whoops.
And sorry, it looks like we've just lost. Oh no, there you are. Cool. And I've just put a mic on now, guys. So I'm really sorry if the sound was really bad before. Hopefully, it's better now. Chris, what's been your favourite thing campaigning thus far?
Oh, I replace my favourite memory every day with a new one when I'm out actually talking with people. Every person has a story. The ones that come to mind, the first time I was recognised walking into a shop, it's a little cafe. I'd never been in there before. I just had a couple of other good conversations, and I walked into this cafe, and the lady behind the counter, she kind of looked at me funny as I was walking in, and I pulled the brochure out of my jacket pocket and went to hand it to her. She says, "Oh, I know you." That was a cool moment.
That's cute.
But that was the first thing that came to mind. But in reality, it's every story, every chance to just listen to somebody. I've spoken to somebody that's scared of losing their shop and just needs change to happen, needs their customers to have more money in their pockets so that they can just stay in business. And that neighborhood would lose their takeaways if this person didn't stay in business. I spoke to somebody today, and it was her first time voting in New Zealand. And she knew when I started to talk about what we were standing for, she knows that we are fixing the problems that she saw as someone new to New Zealand as the things that are wrong here. When we're taking on housing, she knows housing is wrong here because she's lived anywhere else in the world, because everywhere else has this sorted. I was talking to her about a universal basic income, and she knows that this is the way to solve this so her customers can come in and have more to spend on their dinner. And I sat down with her. She didn't know how to vote. I just sat down with her in her restaurant and just talked through an electorate vote, a party vote. I'm asking for both. Talked through the referendum ticks. She knew about those, and how the party vote will make a difference, how the electorate vote makes a difference. And just before I left, she'd never heard of TOP before that. Just before I left, she said, "You've got my vote." And just the depth and the meaning of that conversation is just, I meant something to that person. I already knew that I could make her world better through what we're standing for. I already knew that before I went through the door, but I had a meaningful conversation and actually connected. That's the stuff that matters. That's what makes the campaign awesome.
So nice, right? And when people get it, it's like a eureka moment almost. And it sounds funny I don't know how else to explain it, but you see it. You see people who've been searching for something different. And when you give it to them, they're like, oh, thank you. This is what I've been waiting for. And they take it and it's like a prize that they were waiting for kind of thing. I don't know. It's a funny feeling, right? When they react in that way.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to explain it, but it's really nice when that happens. And yeah, when we can feel the support on the ground growing and more positive chats from people. And I have to say this, of the all the political tools so far, the one that makes people come up to me out of nowhere is the Vote Compass tool. I don't know if anyone watching has tried that one, but it's so interesting. I mean, even in the local supermarket that I was with this morning with Kira, one of our other candidates, and we were just standing outside there with the signs, and a woman just came up to us and explained that she, clearly not a top voter normally, but Top had come up as her number one party, and so she realized that she needed to at least look into us and look into our policies and things like that. So it's just, I think that has been a great tool as well for people to understand where they align and then see. So often, I don't know if you guys are getting these comments, but I'm getting these comments all the time from people randomly that it's, we just obviously naturally align with it, or people naturally align with what we're offering. And
yes,
it's quite interesting.
Most New Zealanders have a heart. Most New Zealanders don't want people to fall through the cracks, and neither do we. Most New Zealanders know that money comes from somewhere and that we need an economy that's moving to be able to grow. And only Top seems to have both of these things locked down. And it's so many people come to us through Vote Compass. I have that conversation. It's exactly this, is you've come to us because you clearly have a heart for people, and you know that New Zealand has to succeed and fill in those cracks sustainably to bring everybody up together. And it just makes sense that people do come to us that way.
Well, I think it's making the connections with people about some of these issues that we're just not hearing from the other parties. I just started hearing ACT go on again about debt as if it's this terrible thing that young people take on debt. They do not care about the debt of young people when their voters are getting the benefit of that debt directly into their hands. So them going on about caring so much about the young people's debt is an absolute lie. It is just a slogan that is virtue signaling at best. If they cared about the debt that is being pushed onto young people, there is no greater debt being pushed onto them right now, then that's been getting worse for the last 30, 40 years, than housing debt. And it does my head in with this absolute hypocrisy. Absolute hypocrisy. If you genuinely care about the debt, we are pushing on the next generation, stop house prices rising immediately. Immediately. And unless and until you're ready to do that, I don't want to hear from you.
And only a minor party can do that. The major parties are scared of that 60% of New Zealand that think they're getting rich out of this thing. It needs to be a minor party to do it. I had a conversation with the same Labour candidate that Andrew did, who I know through my kids. I don't want to name drop people, but I had a conversation with the same person, and she knows we can fix it and the big parties can't. They don't have the guts, they don't have the base. They're worried about losing their majority because it is more than half of New Zealanders that think they are benefiting from this housing pyramid scheme. So it has to be a small party. It has to be us.
Well, no other minor party, small party, has a policy that will address unaffordability.
Yes.
And that's a really important distinction. And, at best, it's not even at best, there isn't one. And I'm finding it really frustrating. I don't know if you guys are getting this at all, but, often we're hearing people say, oh, but the Greens have a wealth tax. Do you have people respond to you in that way when you're talking about housing affordability, as if the wealth tax has anything to do with capping house prices? I don't know. I've seen that a bit. It's like there's this complete, I don't know if it's misinformation or wishful thinking. Maybe I think to be honest, I'll give them the credit. I think it's wishful thinking. I think it's this honest, genuine optimism, hearing something about a wealth tax, like, oh, but the Greens have it. It's like, well, no, they just want all the bars to rise. They don't want to deal with the skew in the system that drives demand into housing. They just want to tax everything indiscriminately. And I think people don't realize that that will not address our housing crisis at all.
Yeah, for me, it's mostly the capital gains that I hear, but the Greens have a capital gains tax, and it's just like, if you exclude the family home like they intend to, then you're inherently excluding 64% of the market, and any tax to limit the rate of house price growth isn't going to be affected when you exclude such a large portion. And also the fact that I met a person who, because KiwiSaver, if you get your KiwiSaver up for your deposit, I believe you need to live in the house. And they said that they don't live there, they're renting it out, and they promised the renters that they will, if they accept her mail going there, and then she won't put their rents up at all. So not only are you excluding a massive section of the market, it's not the most difficult thing to work around, and it's not like we're going to send inspectors around to, are you actually living at this house?
Imagine being that brass to tell your tenants, hey, I'm committing fraud. If you play along with my fraud, I'll give you a cheaper deal. So now you're an accomplice to my fraud. Is that cool? Because you're going to get the benefit out of it. I mean, what?
And then to tell me, an absolute random person, who's campaigning to fix the system, it's kind of like, you're not too sure. I could be a tax inspector,
So funny, right? Like, you're just casually talking about the fraud that you're committing. So happy for you to not care. People, you're funny. You're so
bless them.
I wanted us to chat a little bit about, sorry, if I didn't mention this earlier, guys watching, if you have a question for these awesome candidates, please feed them through. The team will pass the questions to me and I will ask them for you. Sorry if I forgot to say that. We are taking your questions if you have any. Ideally focused on the area, but it can be on any just anything, AMA, within reason. Okay. Sorry, sometimes I feel like I need to say that. So, do you, Andrew, have a favourite top policy other than our housing?
UBI, hands down. I'm super passionate about a UBI. I don't even know how I stumbled into it. Just a few years back, prior to TOP's formation. There we go, because I was studying technology and the rapid development of technology. And as a physio, part of our job to get people well again is typically to break things down into small portions. And then I started, as I said, learning about the technology and breaking jobs down into small portions. When you tell people that their job is likely to be automated, they turn around and say, oh, they can't do my job. It's like, well, they might not be able to do 100% of your role, but if you break down the specific tasks of what's required, there are large portions of it that will be gone. And then with the remaining parts, you can obviously consolidate your other workers. So knowing that automation is coming, and depending on your source, by the end of the decade, it's about 10 to 15% of jobs should be automated. And then by the middle of the century, again, depending on your source, it's about 40 to 60%. And this upheaval will be quite unlike anything we've experienced before.
And this is something that people just aren't talking about, right? I mean, it's a large conversation going on in the States because their estimates over there on their modelling is 50% of jobs will be automated in the next 5 to 10 years. So I guess because for us, these things take a lot longer to come to New Zealand, it's that much further in the future, so we're not really talking or thinking about it. But it's such a good point that you've raised, Andrew, because it is coming and it is going to affect a huge portion of the population who are going to need to retrain, find something new, be going in and out of work.
Yeah.
And we aren't even talking about this.
Yeah.
I haven't, genuinely, if someone's heard about it, then that's awesome. But I have not so far heard a single other party really focus on this automation issue and from a jobs perspective. I've heard about, you know, the potential in our innovation sector and where we can go in that sense, as far as we can turn it into our export, new export market and things like that. The positive side, that's great. But who's talking about the impact on our jobs?
Yeah, and jobs are really important. The statistics show that if you have a job, your mental health is well-being. It brings in that purpose motive. So we're really going to have to support our people through this transition, and hopefully, in my opinion, it gives us the potential to build an amazing world, but only if we do it right. If we go through the periods of lots of people losing their job, it's kind of like the impacts of COVID. They were worried about an additional 150,000 in the early estimates going on to job seekers. Now, obviously, we don't know the full extent of that because the wage subsidy has really cushioned us. But the first thing most people will notice will be driverless vehicles. According to Statistics New Zealand, there's about 100,000 Kiwis that are involved in transportation. And not only will it reduce our road toll, not only will it improve the congestion issues that many of our major cities face, but by the end of the decade, every major car company has driverless cars on the road. So that's 100,000 people. And my dad was a truck driver, and bless him, he was always a truck driver, and that was all he wanted to do. And by the time this would have come around and affected him and a lot of his colleagues that he worked with, their capacity to retrain is going to be a lot more limited because it's quite an aging workforce. So yeah, I believe we need to support our people better than we currently are, and the UBI is something that I think in the future we're definitely going to need. And as someone who personally suffered from the welfare trap, I have a son, I've got split custody, and on the days where I didn't have him, I wanted to go back to being a physio, but going to work made me worse off. At the end of the week, I had about $50 to $100 more cash in my hand, but my work expenses, and then the childcare expenses, and then transport costs, and then eating extra food because you're working, it all added up. And at the end of the day, I was like, I'm worse off for doing this. So I am going flat. So I had to take a step off and go and return to our substandard benefit levels. And fortunately, I have a loving family that really supported me through that. But I know a lot of our people don't. And a lot of our society is held together by volunteers. And more, they're saying, well, I can't volunteer because I can't afford to forego the income.
So true. And it's really incredibly frustrating that this welfare trap is so huge and has been such a huge part of our welfare system. And I'm waiting to hear someone else come along with a plan to remove it. Not make it worse, not make it start later, which, yes, that is better, I guess, making it start later. You know, you get more hours before it all gets taken off you. Cool. But it only just pushes it on at the other end. We need to remove the welfare trap completely, not tinker around with it.
Yeah.
Because that's the other option, and it's just not good enough. I've seen some questions come through here, so I'm just going to start getting into them, if that's okay with you too. Doesn't look like there's anything too mean, don't worry. So the first question here, Chris, this one can be for you. It's from Adam. What would your thoughts be on replacing the Beehive with Zoom conferences?
Oh, it's a good question.
It's a really good question.
Hadn't previously considered this at all. I've worked from home a fair bit over the last little while, as many people have. I've got the luxury of a job that I can do from anywhere. And I lead a team in data management is what I do for a day job. And when I'm at home, I've got a day full of Zoom conferences, but between those calls, I'm far more productive than I would possibly be otherwise, which is great, but being productive isn't my job, communicating is. And I think it's similar in the job of an MP, is the job of an MP is actually to listen, to communicate, to hear, then to dive into the underlying truth of things. This is the select committee type thing of actually interviewing people, taking on all points of view, there's a lot of communications, a lot of people stuff involved in that, which is everything I love about my day job. Genuinely, I know I'm good at that stuff, and part of why I believe I'd be a really good MP. But that stuff is better in person for now. I don't think Zoom's there. I don't think, also seeing the number of MPs falling asleep in the current situation, I'm not sure it would help much.
I have a theory that, if you were, let's go with Adam's hypothetical that, all of the Beehive is replaced with Zoom conferences. So let's assume that from his question, even question time is via Zoom. My theory is that people would, I'm not promoting this as a position at all, but my theory is that people would be more polite, and
Yep.
you wouldn't have this screaming over each other that you see in the House on question time, where you see MPs behaving like children when you would discipline your children to not interrupt and to not be rude and to not speak in that way, and yet we allow our MPs to do so. So I do think that Zoom forces some form of politeness that you don't get in real life. It takes the drama out of it for sure, but I wonder if there was a way to get the best of both worlds. I don't know. What do you think, Andrew?
It's something that I've considered, because climate change is something that I'm supremely concerned about. And I was always like, I don't want to have to fly frequently, to have to travel frequently. So it'd be something I'm supportive of. But in saying that, I don't know the full breadth of the ins and outs of kind of everything that goes behind closed doors. So as far as kind of the debating chamber goes, it might lose some of its pizzazz, some of its theatre, but in my opinion, it could probably do with a bit less theatre and a little bit more effectiveness.
It's a really good summary.
It'd be something that I'd be keen to get behind, but as kind of Chris mentions, I'm not entirely sure if the technology is fully there yet. Maybe we need holographic projectors.
Yeah, I think honestly, all jokes aside, of the whole beam me up Scotty or whatever that joke is, hopefully I made a relevant joke. But but I do think that would be better, because at least you can, be standing and you can imitate life a little bit more. I don't know. It's a great question, Adam. I really like that. Okay, here's a good question. From Hussein. Have either of you, Chris or Andrew, lived overseas? Actually, I don't even know the answer to this. Weirdly, this has never come up. I do not know the answer to this. Have either of you? How have I never asked you? So thank you, Hussein. Have either of you guys lived overseas? And if so, what were you up to? Andrew?
I lived in Melbourne. I lived in Melbourne for 2.5 years. My ex-partner at the time couldn't find work in New Zealand. There's kind of work for physios everywhere, so we made the jump over there. On one hand, it's an amazing city. It's a beautiful city. It's got everything you need, every kind of niche or anything you like. You can find a club or a group or international acts go there, so on and so forth. And the public transport is amazing. It's depressing to be part of such a kind of a well-oiled public transport system and then come back here and it's just not quite as effective. On the flip side is, I couldn't do a city that big again. I think in Melbourne there's 4.5 million people. In Victoria there's 6.5 million people. So that state alone has more than New Zealand. And especially when you go into the city and spend a lot of time there, you can just feel the car fumes and just that kind of big city life. So yeah, Melbourne was the only place overseas I've lived.
I'm picking up you're not keen to move to Auckland anytime soon then.
No, not at all. Tauranga is catching up though. Our infrastructure has not kept up with our growth. So our traffic is terrible for kind of the size of the city we are. But it's still got the beach. It's still surrounded by the oceans. It seems to clear itself away a lot more effectively.
Chris?
I haven't lived overseas. I have travelled a little, but I had kids quite young, and that has kept me local. But yeah, I've had a chance to spend a little bit of time in Australia, few cities around Asia and places like that. So I've got a taste of what that well-oiled machine that Andrew talks about is. But I would personally really struggle. I grew up looking over Tauranga Harbour, on the edge of the harbour, looking down towards the city, and I would struggle to move too far away from Tauranga Moana for very long. It's part of my soul that and you can see it in the back of Andrew's photo. You can see the harbour entrance. That place is special. That's my taonga. It's deep inside.
I think when you have that connection to your home and you have that really strong sense of home, it doesn't necessarily matter to other people where it is, what it is. When it is your home and you feel so strongly about it, it's so special. I feel that way every single time. And if any of my friends are watching, they will know this because they used to get Snapchats from me every day. Every day I would go over the bridge and I would look up at the city and I would just say, I love my city. I love my city so much. And yeah, so anyway, sorry, it just made me think of that. It's not about me. Okay, moving on. That last question really feeds nicely into Rachel had a question around overseas experiences as well, but I think you've kind of covered that. But I guess she's just asking if there was anything in particular that changed the way you saw our own country from that.
I've got one that I think I've shared on a personal stream before, but I spent time in Malaysia just over a year ago now, and it made me really think a lot about immigration and ethnicities and cultures and how a society blends together. Something really unique about Kuala Lumpur is they have 3 cultures in the city. They have the Malay, who are Muslim, and you'll always see the woman with the headscarves. You can recognize them from some distance away. There's an Indian population in the city and a Chinese population in the city. But the way Kuala Lumpur works is they all stick to their own neighborhoods away from each other. And that was different. So when you go into a mall in a Malay part of the city, for example, there's certain foods that you can't buy in that mall because they don't eat pork. So it's different wherever you are in the city.
Quite segregated.
You'll have a different experience. And
right.
I thought a lot about that because there's never any conflict between their cultures. So on first glance, you kind of think, actually, they kind of seem to have a thing sorted out. And then I thought, wait a second, but what do we miss out on when we don't learn from the other people around us? And that kind of developed over the week that I was there as I kind of realized how much we have learned through the different cultures that we have in our country. I have quite a diverse team at work. We've got 4 or 5, we're a team of 6. We've got 4 countries represented. Yep. And for a start, the food is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. We can talk about food for hours and hours. But beyond that, the way that we approach solving problems, the way that we mix together, the way that we collaborate is so much better than if we had all gone through the same school system in the same place. And we're one team that are all different from each other with different experiences and different likes, different dislikes. But because of that, we are stronger. So the lesson from Malaysia is separation may avoid conflict, but they miss out on the rich variety and I don't even have the right word for it, but
the learnings,
the goodness of having different people together in one place.
So true. Now, I know that we're on the 50-minute mark, and fun fact, Andrew's battery is about to die. So I'm going to ask one very last question and hope that he can survive us for this last one. So it's a fun question, and it is from Rachel. I love it. I really like these kinds of questions. Okay, thank you, Rachel, for this question. So it's for all of us. I get to JA on this. So Andrew, what was the first CD or tape, thank you, you ever purchased?
Backstreet Boys.
Yeah,
Backstreet's back. All right.
Oh my God, your answer just literally made my day. That is so good. It was also one of the best concerts I've ever been to. Chris, what about you?
There will be a few before this that I might have illegally downloaded. The first one that I purchased, I believe, was D12 World.
What?
So Eminem's band D12.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would have
Okay.
been the first one I bought, and I hid that because if that was found in my room, I would have lost privileges.
So good. Mine would have for sure been a tape because I'm a child of the 90s, and I think it was Ace of Base, actually.
Nice.
Cassette tape, Ace of Base. Yeah, my first CD was the Spice Girls, so for sure I remember that vividly. If some people are watching wondering what a tape is, well, please go Google it. Anyway, I'm so glad your battery lasted, Andrew. That is nothing short of a miracle. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. I'm so glad that you got to meet 2 more people from our team here at Top, and hopefully you're starting to see that we have a really strong and diverse team, and that is what you are voting for. And that is all, because we're going to run out of time. So take care, and I'll let you guys go now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Andrew.
Nice to see you guys.
See you soon.
October 17th is the day you get to decide what you want for Aotearoa New Zealand. 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years in the future.
Top has a plan to tackle the biggest issues in our society. We're a team of experts, not politicians. We're scientists, economists, lawyers, small business owners.
We bring in a universal basic income, $250 a week for every adult Kiwi, no questions asked. This gets rid of the welfare trap and allows people to retrain, start new businesses, and rewards unpaid labour like household work and volunteering.
Top's housing and tax reforms would hold house prices and rents stable for a generation. New Zealand needs property owners to pay their fair share of tax. We need more quality, medium density housing around active and public transport networks. We also need stronger renters' rights so everyone can call their house a home.
Small businesses are the backbone of New Zealand's economy. To help them thrive, Top will abolish provisional tax. We'll help businesses with digital uptake and energy efficiency and give them access to universities and polytechnics to solve their problems.
You know, the COVID recovery, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to build back better than we were before. We can improve the environment and have a thriving economy. This is what real progress looks like, and businesses can be part of the solution. Aotearoa New Zealand is a taonga. It's a treasure. Decades of old school thinking has given us the problems we face today. Let's make a change.
The Opportunities Party has the skills, ideas and courage to make real change. Don't leave change to chance. Party vote Top.